Hi. Can everybody hear me? Okay. All right. Cool. We'll be getting started shortly. We'll give about a minute or so for everybody to get comfortable. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate having you. Yeah.
You got 1 minute, Matt, and then we get started. Thanks, Matt. You get the email?
All right. Once again, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight to our evening with Hall of Fame sports journalist Marc J. Spears, which is presented tonight by the National Association of Black Journalists chapter here at Loyola, of which I am the... My name is Matthew Richards. I am the vice president of the chapter, and we are very excited for you to be here with us tonight. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce both our speaker and our moderator for this evening. Tonight's moderator is the Marion M. and John S. Stokes Jr. Visiting Professor of Race and Culture and Media here at Loyola, the Senior News Editor at Front Office Sports, a director of the Sports Journalism Institute, and a former president of the NABJ National Chapter, and our faculty advisor this year, Mr. Gregory Lee, Jr. And our speaker tonight for this evening is the 2023 Kurt Gowdy Media Award winner and Naismith Basketball Hall of Famer, senior NBA writer for Anscape and ESPN, Marc J. Spears. And without further ado, let's get tonight started.
Thanks, Matthew. First, I want to say thank you. And I'm, as a former president of the National Association of Black Journalists, always encouraging our chapters, our student chapters. Loyola's doing a great job. I'll never forget when I started my chapter at Xavier a long time ago, so I know what that kind of work is. So thank you for that intro. So let's get started. Mark and I go way back, so it's going to be like a regular conversation. We thank you guys for being here for this great conversation. I want to thank Mark for coming from the West Coast, the left coast.
The best coast.
Maybe. I learned a little about that last year. But anyway, so let's just get started. So, Mark, you've been a long-time journalist. When people see, today everyone's more immediate gratification. We see the Jamel Hills, the Stephen A. Smiths, the Michael Wilbons, the Adam Schefters. Everyone think that got there immediately. But there's a process to getting where they are. There's a lot of steps you have to get there. What was the process for you to becoming, an expert in race, culture, and in sports, especially a long-time NBA writer? What led you to become a journalist?
Man, I known I wanted to be a journalist since the 7th grade, which is kind of crazy. I've said that story 1,000 times, but it's always crazy to say that. Grew up in San Jose. My mom's here. She's the reason why we grew up in San Jose and not New Orleans. But grew up in San Jose and went to this junior high school called Silverdale Junior High, and I loved basketball, dreamed of being an NBA player. It was all a dream, like Biggie said. But we had a career day, and I think it's imperative that schools all over the country continue to do these things, especially on a junior high level. And a guy from the Warriors came and spoke to my class, and I went because I was like, man, maybe he got free tickets or a bumper sticker or a hat or something.
And at the time, the Warriors weren't really great, right?
No, they were terrible. But it was free. It was me, So he didn't offer any of that, but he offered some life-changing advice. For some reason he asked me, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was like, I want to play for y'all. And he's like, well, what if it don't happen? What if you get hurt? You can't play. Everybody ain't LeBron James, who didn't exist at the time.
No.
But he's like, you can't play forever.
Right.
What are you going to do when you're done playing? And I was like, I don't know. And he said, well, if you could find a job where you can combine what you love most in life with what you do best in school, then you'll find a job that you're happy with every day. It's amazing advice, excellent advice to give a seventh grader, and I really, really took that to heart. And so I was in this program where for creative kids, and my teacher, Miss Thompson, if I ever bump into her, man, I would give her the biggest hug, because she said, all right, everybody needs to write a letter to somebody in a field that they're interested in. And I thought about what the guy from the Warriors said. I had, Sports Illustrated subscription. I begged my dad to give me a Sports Illustrated subscription since elementary school, which might have been a precursor to all this, right? And
Right.
I asked, I remember seeing a stat in Sports Illustrated that at that time that less than 2% of all college basketball players made it to the NBA. And I was a pretty realistic kid. I'm like, I ain't gonna be one of them 2%, but if I could just play in college, that's cool. So I thought about that stat, thought about what the guy said to combine what you love most and what you do best. And I was like, well, if I can't play in the NBA Finals, I can't play in the Super Bowl, I can't play in the World Series, the next best thing is to be there, right? This is a seventh grader thinking this. So my teacher, Miss Thompson, had us write a letter to somebody in a field that we were interested in. And I remember the flamboyant, talkative, opinionated writer at the San Jose Mercury News was a guy named Marc Purdy. So I wrote Marc Purdy a letter, and he actually wrote me back, and he told me everything I needed to do from the seventh grade through college to be a sports writer. I got the cheat code in the seventh grade. Seriously. Yeah. And so he's like, write on the school paper in the seventh grade or the school yearbook. I wrote on the school paper. I covered the eighth grade flag football team. My pen name, Mark J. Spears, was a seventh grader's decision. I don't know why I put the J period in there, but it actually works good because it slows it down, right? Yeah. And then they still call me Marcus anyway. But
they don't put the period in the J usually.
Yeah, and so I covered the eighth grade flag football team. Yeah. I was going to practice. I was covering their games, writing in the school paper. So there's a school paper in this junior high somewhere that has my stories. And he said, when you get to high school, take all the typing classes, write on the school paper or on the yearbook. I wrote on the school paper, took typing 1, 2, and 3. And he said, when you get to college, write on the school paper, but get as many internships as possible, which applies to any college student.
Any college, yeah.
And so, I carried this letter it was gospel until my parents moved here, and then the letter got lost. But but I used to just look at it and dream looking at that letter. And I followed everything he said. So then when I did go to college and my college basketball career wasn't the greatest, I knew I wasn't one of those 2%. I wrote on the school paper every year I was in college. I got an internship for free after my sophomore year. I begged the San Jose Metro to let me write for this weekly paper to cover sports for them, and they let me. I joined the National Association of Black Journalists. I got my first internship through them. I ended up writing high school basketball for the San Jose Mercury News. I got an internship at the Dallas Morning News, which at that time had a 75-page paper on Sunday.
Yep.
So by the time I graduated from San Jose State in '95, and my basketball career was nothing.
Well, I just want to say, how did you balance playing basketball and then covering sports?
I made time. You had to make time.
Because you had a
I
college
wanted
scholarship.
it.
You
Like I had a coach when I played 2 years at a junior college, one at the University of D.C., HBCU, and went to San Jose State. But I had a coach in D.C. who told me, man, if you cared about basketball as much as you do that goddamn journalism, you'd be a hell of a player. I'm like, I'm playing at UDC, man. I ain't going to the league. Like, I know the truth. Like, I had to care about the goddamn journalism. But by the time I graduated, I felt like a first-round pick because I had so much more experience than everybody else. And that's why my first job, I was able to cover Arkansas's football and basketball team out of college.
SEC country.
Yeah.
So I see your mom's here. Yeah. Hi, Miss Carolyn. And we always talk. We talk about covering the beat, covering sports, and a lot of things that you talk about. The foundation came from your parents. What did they tell you that helped your everyday life in terms of like you cover the beat? You always would say, "How did you master it?" Where it came from was the foundation you got from your parents, and those lessons, life lessons that apply to your job every day.
My father, God rest his soul, he passed away in January. Yep. And he used to tell me wear clean drawers all the time. So that was important.
Number one.
So I think that as a traveling writer, he's like, you never know what happens, so make sure you have on some clean drawers. So take that for what it's worth. I had an incident in the 5th grade where when I started falling in love with basketball, we had a park but no basketball court. Yep. There was no Boys and Girls Club. There was no YMCA nearby. Yep. And I was like a curious kid. I wasn't shy. And there was this lady that was renting a house around the corner, and they happened to have a hoop on her garage. And I asked her, if I could use her garage to play. Kids didn't play. She's like, yeah, go ahead. One day she's not there. The next door neighbor didn't like that the ball was bouncing into her yard. Mm-hmm. So she called the cops on me. Yep. Cops showed up. I'm in the 5th grade. They're like, what are you doing here? Do you live here? I'm like, no. I said, but I do have permission to play basketball here. My dad was always like telling me to be confident and respectful, and I was very respectful. They're like, well, if you don't live here, you have to leave. And I'm like, well, I got permission to be here. Right. Do you want to go downtown, boy? Like, that was what they told me. You want to go down? Either you leave or you're coming downtown with us. Right. So I literally took my basketball, left, went home. My dad comes home, and he goes, boy, why your lip poked out? He had just worked like a 10-hour day. He was tired. And I told him what happened, and I still just, remember the look in his eyes. Like, it was anger, it was fear, and he just got in his car and he left. You know this story, right, Mom? I think you do. And he went to some store, came back with a hoop, a goal, and a net. Put it on the garage and said, son, you always got a place to play. If he doesn't do that, I don't know if I fall in love with basketball like that, right? Right. Because I didn't have to go nowhere. I was there. I had my boom box. I had my basketball. I was fine. But I think what my mom did that was important was when she saw that I was, really intrigued by being a sports writer, she was like a Tiger Woods mom, man. She was planning some steps that I didn't really see it at the time and didn't understand it. But I think she realized I was really serious about it. And the high school I went to was initially trash in basketball, so I didn't want to go there. But she was like, well, they got a great English teacher. It's like an award-winning English teacher. And they have a journalism school paper professor who's from the local paper. So I got a chance to rub elbows with a journalist every week. And so she's like, you're going there. Yeah. All right. I almost got beat up every day because it had some drama at the school, but I learned how to be a writer. But it was brilliant that she did that. Like she saw that, okay, how can I accentuate this stuff from a writing standpoint? And I remember I was getting recruited by a school, Hawaii Hilo, and they came to the house and they brought some chocolate macadamia nuts, put them on the table. My dad's not even paying attention. He's just eating the chocolate macadamia nuts, right? And the coach was like, we want you to come play for us. We don't have a journalism program per se, but we could put some things together. to help you get a journalism major.
They just want you in the court. That's all they wanted.
But he said we could put some stuff together. He's reaching in his briefcase, and my mom turned to me and she goes, "You're not going there." You know, like, so she was ensuring that even though this place was going to pay for me to go to school, that if it wasn't going to be the right place for me, journalism-wise, then I didn't need to go there. So that's kind of, my dad always, you know, and my mom as well, like she put me in the sports at first. When I was in the first grade, she put me in soccer, but they always supported the sports part, and I just fell in love with sports. And then they put the foundation that led to the journalism part.
So let's fast forward a few years. So now you're at Anscape, covering the nexus of race and sports and culture. Why don't you explain to the audience what actually the mission and what you guys, because you were one of the first reporters there. You've been there for a few years. So just give an introduction to what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Anscape was originally the Undefeated. People remember that. It's a combination of race and culture and sports and entertainment. And actually was coming together at a unique time when there was a lot of, which is still the case,
Still going on,
pain and racism in the world.
Yep.
And so, you know, there's a lot of journalists, a lot of black journalists that aren't comfortable writing about
And
race.
how did you get comfortable writing about race?
I mean, I had to go back to my mom again.
Yeah.
Indirectly, we would go to she would drag me to the Afro-American Center in San Jose. And when she was having, as my dad called her, goddamn meetings, they had a film room, and I was watching Eyes on the Prize. So I was learning about the civil rights movement, Lunch Counter, Selma, Martin Luther King, all these things. And I was just like taken aback. I was like 10 years old watching these movies and learning about all this pain that African Americans went through, primarily in the 60s. And then she would make sure we went to the Martin Luther King, you know, parade, and she would take the train to San Francisco. I missed a couple because I didn't want to get up early, but I always look forward to the Juneteenth festival. And San Jose was only like 8% black at the time, so it felt like all the black people there knew each other.
Right.
So the Juneteenth festival was a really big deal. I had a lot of pride in that. And then eventually, my mom went to like this multicultural church. I was more interested in going to a predominantly black church, and she had some friends that allowed me to go with them. So I would go to this predominantly black church called Emmanuel Baptist. And so that's where, you know, I learned a lot about culture and race, and, you know, seeing things. My dad won a racism lawsuit at an auto plant that he worked for. My mom, the reason why she left New Orleans was because there was a nursing school she wanted to get into. They didn't allow her to because she was black, so she ended up going to a black nursing school in St. Louis, where she met my father. They had me. She got a job at Stanford Hospital. That's how we got to the Bay.
Right.
So it was inevitable that I was going to learn about race.
Right.
But I think I learned to speak intelligently about it in a way where I think people could listen and learn. And it's not, while I have my opinions, I know
we all do.
I'd rather, if I'm going publicly about it, I'd rather kill you with facts. Truth.
Yep.
If it's factual and it's truthful, then I don't need to argue it. I'm just telling you what happened.
Right.
Right. And you can learn from it. So when this job opened up at Anscape, I was working at Yahoo Sports. I felt like my head was against the wall. It was like I was writing the same story over and over. Who got traded? Who might get traded? Why won't he get traded? You know, like it was getting old and boring, and I had my handcuff a lot there. I mean, all these creative things I was trying to do, they would let me do it for a month, and then they would block it, and I was like, I got to do something else. And then this job opened up where they were like, you want to come to Undefeated and write about race and sports in the NBA? and a lot of my colleagues, even to this day, black writers of color, they're not, even though they're of color, they're
comfortable writing.
They're not comfortable writing about it. But I have always been comfortable and always been excited about writing about it, and especially the part about writing just factual stories of what happened to to enlighten people and teach people and hopefully maybe open their minds a little bit.
Yeah, no, you're 20 plus years before you covering the NBA. Where's any certain stories or stories you wish you could have done before you got that gave you the confidence to actually want to do this full time at Anscape and not covering the trades, not covering games, and to be able to touch those type of stories? Did you have stories like you did at Yahoo you wish you could have explored more, and that's why you took that?
I wrote a story in Denver when I worked at the Denver Post about I got my uncle. He'll laugh at this. I got tired of hearing all these stories about no black people playing baseball.
Right.
I'm like, well, shoot, there ain't no white people playing basketball in the NBA. But nobody talked about that.
Right.
So I wrote that story for the Denver Post, and specifically about the American white basketball player and how the numbers were going down. And I remember they changed my lead. The editors did, if we didn't have any black editors, to make it softer, to talk about this story. Whereas when I got to Anscape, they're like, go, just write it. And so I got to also interview the first black player in NBA history when I was in Denver, Earl Lloyd.
Earl Lloyd, yep.
Spend time with him and those kind of stories, like, or just even writing about culture, which, I think everybody can write about black history, but everybody can't write about culture. You gotta be black to understand the culture in a lot of ways, right?
Right.
So I got to write a lot about culture, and it's just been a phenomenal job. Where, unfortunately, in my business, if it ain't LeBron, if it ain't Steph, if it ain't player that got arrested, and if it ain't somebody that's doing something crazy, a lot of times where I work and a lot of the other places don't care.
Industry,
they just want things that click, whereas at Anscape, they just let me go. Like I have a story coming up about Randy Livingston, who
local
NBA
legend
player, legend, perhaps the greatest high school basketball
in
Louisiana, next to Robert
Pack.
Yeah. Robert Pack was number one. Livingston was two. But he just went through this situation where he got sanctioned. He got suspended in December out of nowhere for recruiting violations, and he's coaching at Newman School. They just won 2 state championships. This has been the 3 state finals in a row, and then all of a sudden he gets suspended. But the suspension just says recruiting violations with no specifics. And according to their bylaws, he can't defend himself. It's just, that's it. And they made the suspension like 10 minutes before they closed for winter break. And he had this great team, and all of a sudden he had to go away. But fortunately, in the system here, a lot of people in this state don't fight it. They just get upset. And like they even have things in the laws, well, if you appeal it and you lose, then you got to pay for the lawyer fees.
Yep.
It's like all this antiquated stuff. And Randy's like, I'm fighting this.
Yeah, you should have.
Got an injunction, got his job back, and today he qualified for the championship game. So, it'll be interesting to see. Kind of wrote in my lead that the same people that made the Hall of Fame in the state of Louisiana high school sports last year in April, December they suspended them, and then Friday night they could be giving them a trophy. The same dude that suspended him, he handed him a state championship.
Yeah.
So, but that's like a story that to me is maybe it doesn't make the front of ESPN immediately, and then but people start reading it, I think, and it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it might even be written
We got a
locally.
reporter he might be stealing my story right now.
It might not be written locally. It should have been written locally, but
maybe it gets written. Hopefully it does, and they bring light to it. But I think what Randy's ultimately trying to do is, by him having the platform to stand out and take that bullet, then perhaps he makes it easier for the next coach, and maybe there's change that happened because he did it.
Yeah,
of course. So that's the kind of stories I like to write, like stuff like that. And then I have another story this week. I'm actually, because I love Greg Lee.
Yeah. Here you go. He's going to go to South Africa tomorrow, okay?
Yeah. So I have God willing, everything goes right. I fly out tomorrow morning, 6:30, get in at 9:30, and then my flight to South Africa leaves at 3 o'clock out of San Francisco. So which would be amazing.
What you'll be covering there, South Africa, though?
The Basketball Africa League. But so then I have another story Friday about a African woman who became an executive in the Basketball Africa League, impressed the Milwaukee Bucks, and now she's a scout for the Bucks. And people don't know this, that there's this
Black woman.
black
Scout,
African woman.
African,
Checks 3 boxes.
Three checks we thought, yep.
Yeah,
3
that,
boxes, yep. Black African woman, yes.
Who was able to go from the Basketball Africa League to the NBA. It's pretty incredible. So that, like, those are the like stories that I get to write that maybe people aren't thinking about, that, you know, I get excited about, and that like just like some of these people that sometimes it's the big dogs. Now I write about the big dogs a lot of times too, but sometimes it's stories like this that maybe it seems like a small story now, but it could grow into something bigger.
Yeah. So let's put a pin in that, because not only you write about these type of stories, but also in the industry you became a leader. You became and also an advocate. You became chair of the National Association of Black Journalists Sports Task Force, and during your time you advocated for to get more diversity in newsrooms and better coverage. Talk about your time doing that and what were you most proud of, and why did you do that?
That's a good question. There was a journalist, a black journalist, who in the late 90s, I was up for a job at his old paper and was excited about it. And I asked him about it, and he said he was too busy to talk to me. Mm-hmm. And then 20 minutes before a game that started at noon, so no one like this was some night game or nothing like that. Right. He goes, "You got 2 minutes, shoot." And I was like, "Man, I'm trying to get this job at this place you used to work. Just wondering if you heard something." And he goes, "They don't like who they interviewed already, so I don't think you're going to get it." Like one of the rudest things I've ever heard. If I said the person's name, you know who it is.
I'll probably know who it is.
Yeah. But and I definitely don't want to give this person power.
Nope.
So some people might figure it out. But anyways, no, it's not Stephen A. That's my boy. That kind of like didn't feel good, especially coming from somebody that was black. And I kind of felt like, well, you can't help everybody, but you could try. And if I could help folks, I don't ever want to feel like that.
Right.
You know, then I think about the guy helping me in the 7th grade, writing me back, right? So I always felt like if I could help somebody, if I could reach back, but the thing I always tell them is, well, you got to reach back too.
Yep.
Well, 2 things. Like I told Malika Andrews this when she was coming by for lunch and advice. I'm like, don't forget me when you make it big. I told her that, but that's joking, but
that's joking, but that's actually true. Yeah,
but I tell them like, you gotta help other people. You gotta reach back. Yeah, I don't need nothing. Just reach back and help other people, and hopefully, you know, that cycle continues. And so that kind of got me really ingrained in the National Association of Black Journalists. But maybe the main thing was they gave me an internship when nobody else did. Like, I applied for, after my junior year, I applied for 20 internships, and that was the only one I got. I think I got the last straw because they sent me to Grand Rapids, Michigan. Right? Like,
but internship, we can get it.
Yeah, I mean, but no, everybody else was like Miami, New York, LA. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Well, they didn't care about sports neither.
No, they care about sports, but I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
No, I'm talking about NABJ.
I don't know. I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yeah, but while I was there, because it wasn't New York, they let me do more.
Yep. And
I got to interview this boxer by the name of Floyd Mayweather when he was 18, and he liked juice boxes instead of cars at the time. I got to do a Cubs game. Me covering that Cubs game, the guy that ended up hiring me to cover the Denver Nuggets in '99 read that story when I was an intern and was impressed by that story. He said, "You're the best story that day with all the Cubs writers. Yours was the best." And he remembered that. NABJ guy. But I got to do amazing things that summer, and then they sent me to their convention to write on the convention paper. So I almost feel in a lot of ways like if NABJ doesn't pick me, like, as an intern to go to Grand Rapids, like, what happens? Like, I think I still make it, but it's certainly
a little bit easier.
That made me go from to, oh, he nice. You know what I mean? Like, it really helped my resume a lot and pushed me ahead of, I think most people in the country once I was able to get that.
Yeah. So you've been to 20 different countries around the world. You've been to the Olympics, lots of NBA finals, NBA All-Stars, big events.
Back to Olympics.
And you're going back to the Olympics again this year. We went together.
Mom's going back.
Your mom's going. Yeah. We went to the Olympics
She's
together.
been on me too, bro.
Oh, I know. What, you got tickets for her?
Yeah, I got a couple tickets, yeah.
Got to make sure you take her mom first.
She's making me go to London to get tea.
Oh, she's a tea queen. You got to have tea with her in London.
Yeah.
All right. So we went to the Olympics in Beijing for the first time, so that was an experience in itself, just looking at the world. And when we walked in China, they thought he was one of the NBA players. He was signing autographs.
No, they just saw a tall black man
They
in
did.
China, and they wanted to take a picture with me. They didn't say nothing about basketball. They saw Negro.
So
they like live in rural China. They ain't never seen no big old black.
no, they
dude.
didn't. No, they didn't. So
You look Chinese, so they thought you were Chinese.
I am. I'm part Chinese. So yeah,
That's what I said.
yeah, that's my family. Yeah.
Lee.
Yeah, well, I am. Anyway, so you covered All-Star games, World Championships. So what was the most unique assignment that you had to ever cover, and how did you manage that? And it was also during I know what you're going to say,
Probably the bubble, the NBA bubble.
the NBA bubble. Not only covering the bubble, but during the time of George Floyd, given the position that you were in, because George Floyd was going on at that time. Tell us what it was like being isolated for 90 days. You were there 90 days, right? Pretty much, yeah. What was it like to be in the bubble and then then you had to cover what's going on out in the outside world?
It was the craziest and most unique experience in my career, being in the NBA bubble for 90 days. It was crazy because it was in the midst of COVID, and we were like the only people that seemed like to be able to be doing anything somewhat fun, I guess. It was, if you're a basketball fan, and Rob, you'll love this, it was the greatest basketball time of my life. I mean, I'm watching my uncle like this, the Eastern Conference Finals, Game 1. Game's over. I walk 20 yards, go to the next gym, and the Clippers are playing the Nuggets in Game 7 of the second round. It was like a weird dream. Like, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like, for basketball, and I'm like we're sitting right here, the game right there, because nobody's there.
It's like watching NFL Sunday Ticket, but in person.
No,
you didn't do it in person. Like you have all the games.
Oh, yeah,
You walk around.
there's 3 games going on. I'm
Yeah.
just going gym to gym.
Yeah, in person.
So the basketball part was amazing, but there was a mental part to it.
Yeah.
And I'd minored in psychology, so I think one of the little things that my little minor did for me was I came there mentally prepared when a lot of people weren't, players, journalists. So we get there, they talking about they're going to give me 2 double beds. No, indeed, I'm not doing no getting a king bed. Well, you're going to have to wait an hour or so. I'm going to be here for 90 days. So.
When I was nothing, just give me my.
And I got my king bed. Then I got a wine fridge.
That's important.
Kept it stocked. Seriously, I had a wine fridge. I had a box of snacks that I shouldn't have had, which wasn't good. My mom, I was complaining to her about how I didn't think the food was cooked well enough, so she sent me a toaster oven. So that worked good. Then I love coffee. I'm a coffee addict and a wine addict, but the coffee was awful. So I ground my own beans every day and made my own coffee. And the referees were coming to my, hey, bro, can you give me some of that? Referees were coming to my room to get coffee. And then another thing I did was one of my coworkers, not mention her name, watch that person's name.
I know that person. I know who you're talking about.
But they got a elliptical machine in their room. And they got an elliptical machine in the room. So I asked my boss, I'm like, can I get a bicycle? Because we had to go to a lot of places. You got to get your food. You had to get your COVID test every morning. So I got like this horrible bicycle, but it was mine. And the referees just called me Debo, big old dude on a bike, riding the bike every. But I made it fun and entertaining and mentally, it was fine mentally. So even when we're getting close to 90 days, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, but you were.
But there were other people like players, coaches,
coaches.
media people that were like cracking because I don't think they mentally prepared themselves for what it was going to be.
But how much were you willing to spend for McDonald's during that trip?
You had to mention that. This New Orleans Pelicans security guard always messes with me because he was in a bubble. And I got so tired of the food there. We were on the bus coming back from a game. I'm like, say, bro, I'll give you $100 if you take me to the drive-thru right now.
But you couldn't go outside the bubble because of all.
You could go on the bus from the place to the game and back.
Right.
And we drive by society,
Yeah.
Like I wanted a McDonald's hamburger more than any time since my youth, But like we were insulated, but like those people that were in there. Another thing too, I fought for hot food. I got it. Had a campaign. We wrote a laugh. I thought it was funny. I fought for hot food. We had a white media dude who he's like, yeah, somebody's gonna cut your hair once a month. I'm like, no, I need somebody to cut my hair every week. Why you get your hair cut every week? I'm like, cause I do. So we changed. He got the rules changed. Like we were fighting in there to get like. If you're gonna be here for 90, yeah. So I got my hair cut every Friday. They just happened to have somebody that was manicure pedicure, so I was getting mani the pedicure every Friday too.
Now, didn't the players go there? Or they had their own spot?
They had their own stuff.
Okay,
they had the best of everything. But then they also said, which I think also helped me, like you could do one thing a week. You could golf or you could fish. And I decided to go fishing, and I fell in love with fishing. I was actually supposed to go this morning, but
the weather was bad. Yeah.
But like, so that was going back to constantly like doing things that relaxed my mind, made me happy, and I think when I got through those 90 days, I was fine.
No, you went in ready.
My wife was little.
Well, you were newlywed,
but she got it. She understood.
Yeah. So my question too is like you were talking about how a lot of people were in that situation. They were, I wouldn't say, for lack of a better term, cracking because it was like they're just stuck. But then,
and I understand. Yeah,
we understand. But like also during that time, the world was exploding outside, and given the NBA and being a mostly black league, and in all the world events that was going on around in America during that time with George Floyd, and then where you are at Anscape, what was the atmosphere like during that time inside of the bubble, given what was going on outside?
Anytime there was a social justice thing, then that's when I got the call to go on TV.
Yeah, whatever they call you all the time. Hey, Marc, what you doing?
Riding my bike.
Riding my bike, yeah. Come on over.
So I would go on a lot for that. I was there when they suspended for a couple days to protest.
With the Bucks
did George Hill about the shooting in Kenosha.
Yep.
Protested that, and that led to voting polls and other things to help black businesses and stuff, and it sparked the WNBA and Major League Baseball, hockey, and soccer leagues and tennis players to do things that maybe
they weren't going to do. Yeah.
And so that was truly incredible to see. So no, it was like we were literally, us media, we were in a motel room. Like basically, when you open the door and you outside, you're not in the hotel, right? But that was the deal for 90 days.
Yeah. So I know you during your career you like to extend yourself a little bit more to try to flex your muscles. You decided to go back to school, and then you decided to go to LSU. Why did you do that?
I have a lot of family here. Love y'all. I grew up in the Bay, but I spent a lot of time in the summers in New Orleans, and parents moved here, so got to spend a lot of time. And I could spell Chapatoulas. I know how to get around, and I always loved LSU sports. So I wanted to do something different. I feel like I got a master's already in journalism. I didn't need that, so I wanted to get a master's in something else. So I went into sports business management.
Yep. And
LSU had a good course. I looked at a couple schools, but I'm like, love LSU sports, be connected with LSU, to be connected to Louisiana. And I applied, and they found out, and they recruited me. I was trying to play on a football team or the basketball team or something. I was like, oh, they want me? I felt nice, you know. And they're like, yeah, you ain't got to take the GRE. We want you to come here. I'm like, well, I'm in then. Price was good. Got to know, they treated me like family. And the crazy thing, my mom remembers this, the day I graduated, we drove up, and I bumped into a guy, talk about being nice to people we met a guy at an All-Star game in New Orleans who remembered me, who was part of the recruiting team at LSU, and he let me go take pictures in the locker room in my gown on graduation day in the football locker room, and then go onto the field and hit the victory bar and all that. And then she bumps into Ed Ogeron and starts talking about Joe Osteen, and I had to go graduate. I got to go, Mom. So I left her in Tiger Stadium so she could talk to Coach Ogeron.
Well, that's what you're talking about, the foundation.
She also told me that she prays about the Tigers every game. I don't know if I believe that.
I don't know about that either. You gonna pray about the ladies basketball team because she's a big LSU women's basketball fan. So,
yeah.
So I'm gonna have one more question, then we're gonna go to the audience for questions for Mark. So you've written a book. You worked on a film about the tragedy of Hurricane Katrina and how it relates to blacks in the city. Recently, you just had a 6-part series on Hulu called The Conversations Project, where you had a lot of outstanding black people talk about different issues around a great meal, around a great black chef. And it's sort of like an extension of what you're doing with your writing. Why have you been keeping yourself busy with these projects? And do you have any other projects coming ahead?
Oh, man, I got to keep diversifying my portfolio and try to get an extra dollar when I can, man.
Yeah.
But you got to keep challenging yourself. I have an amazing job, and that allows me to do different things. So the Conversations Project actually started with Anscape saying that we're looking for projects, throw ideas at us. I'm going to try. You say that, I'm going to try.
Right.
And myself and Chef David Lawrence, we had an idea for a TV show, basically Iron Sharpens Iron, Black Dinner Show, bringing people to the table, drinking wine, having delicious food, talking about the world through our eyes. And Elaine Welteroth from Project Runway and Teen Vogue, she came on. And I'm really proud of the show. We got 6 episodes on Hulu. Like, who would have thought? Like,
who would have thought, yeah.
Had an idea, and it ended up working. I had a TV show on Hulu. Now, where it goes from here, I don't know. I'm really proud of it. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. I need some extra numbers. I thought it was great. It might have been too intelligent for Hulu.
They didn't know what they had. They didn't know what they had.
So I mean, we weren't throwing food at each other.
No.
We weren't calling each other the bees.
No,
you know what I mean?
It's not housewives. It was adults.
So it was
real
very
grown folk conversation.
Probably it was more PBS than Hulu, right? But
yeah.
So I don't know about the future of the show, but we are up for a GLAAD award. We had 2 episodes where we had transgender women on the show, and I'm real proud about that. Like that, people a lot of times may never meet anybody transgender, but now you're going to dinner.
Now you're going to dinner with them, yeah.
And so we'll see what happens in May. We're up for the GLAAD Award in New York City, and I hope the show survives. But
what did you learn from that experience? I mean, just you're not a Hollywood type. You weren't that. You just had an idea.
I learned a lot. I told your class about this yesterday.
Yeah, you did. You did. How the original show was supposed to be. He wanted it to be in Napa.
They knew it was off the record what we talked about. Right?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. No. I just it's the first time I ever did a show.
Yep.
Even though I was an executive producer on it, I wish I wasn't in the editing room more. I wish I had more influence on guests.
Right.
Topics. But there was a lot of chiefs. A lot of different people making calls that we got that, so ultimately I think if I do something like that again, I need to be in the room more.
Yeah.
I need to, we're going to watch film. We're going to figure out how these shows should be, who should be on, but it's still an amazing show, but I kind of feel like a lot of stuff I could do, it could always be better.
Yeah. All right. Anyone, it's question time. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Spears? We have a microphone here. Matthew, can you give him a mic? Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I want to preface my remarks. I am from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and you know the name Big House Gaines.
Yes.
And I grew up 1,000 steps from Big House Gaines's house. His wife taught me Latin. The question that I have, I am a writer, and
What's your name?
my first name is Jim. The last name is Ewers, spelled Ewers.
Yes, sir.
The question that I have is this: why is there a reticence among some black sportscasters and writers, as you said, to write about issues that affect African Americans? Is it because they don't have the experiences growing up that speak to racial intolerance? Or is it that they are fearful of what the pushback might be because they're writing about topics that are challenging?
So you're saying why don't they?
Yes.
More? I've talked to Greg about this. It was interesting in the bubble. Everybody was suddenly a social justice expert. Everybody was, what can we talk about? How can we make the world better? Let's be one. Let's be one. And I do remember before George Floyd, I had a white journalist coworker who said on a conference call, well, these black athletes don't want to talk about this to me. I'm a middle-aged white man. Why do they want to talk about this to me? And it really burned me because I was like, because that's your job. Ask them about it. I could ask anybody about anything. Ask them about it. Ask the right questions. And if you don't know, ask me what to ask them. But I think it's not just a white reporter. There's black reporters that don't want to write about it. But it was easy to write about it in the bubble after George Floyd because it was fashionable, it was cool. Everybody was down for the cause for a year, and then it changed, right? And I knew that was going to happen. But now it's like I'm not worried about cool and fashionable. I'm worried about telling our stories and telling the truth and bringing light to things. And perhaps has that maybe stymied my career some? Probably so. Maybe I'm looked at as Mark X sometimes, right? But I'm proud of that. If that's how people see me, I'm proud of that because I'm proud of my race. I'm proud of other races. I grew up around a multicultural background. I don't want to just see black people win. I want to see everybody win. I want to see women win. I want to see people from the LGBTQ plus community win. And a lot of times in order to help them win, you got to tell their stories. And so, Black History Month passed. How many black reporters actually wrote about Black History Month? But a lot of people want to write about the low-hanging fruit and write safe, and that's not me. But that's why I'm happy I'm at Anscape, because I could be me and, try to champion everybody. White people don't need racism against them either. Nobody needs it. Like, we all got to be in this together, and I want everybody to win. And unfortunately, people oftentimes just want themselves to win and be safe. What's your name, sir?
Gail Armand, native New Orleanian.
What neighborhood?
All around the city. 9th Ward, 7th Ward, 8th Ward.
All right.
You name it.
See where I got my personality from.
What led you to get involved in the story Katrina Cop?
Well, the man behind you, stand up. Stand up, Ruka. This Officer Rhett Charles, retired New Orleans police officer. This was actually a pretty. You can sit down now, Rhett. Thanks. He was doing the Pelicans games. He still does. Works Pelicans games. Works security. So after Katrina calmed down and the Pelicans came back, and I remember their first game with Kobe and the Lakers, and they're the Hornets. Remember Phil Jackson saying something about the sewage here that really bothered me. It wasn't the Saints. It was a Hornets game. Y'all stop. Rhett, what game was it, Rhett? What did we talk at? Thank you. God. No, it wasn't when the dude blocked the punt. No, it wasn't that game. When you come up here, you can tell the story. No. So I had not seen Rhett until that day. And we saw each other. We hugged. I think day before, me and Pat got together and went and saw his house that moved across the street. He's like, something ain't right. Why is my house? This don't feel like where my house is. Oh, now I know. It moved across the street during the storm. But I saw Rhett, and I hadn't seen him, and he started telling me this devastatingly awful, painful story about what he went through as a police officer during Katrina, as a police officer and personally, and we both sat at the table and cried before the game. And he ended up flying to Denver. I flew him to Denver. I like, we got to document this. We filmed him. I taped him. And we had this, like, I almost felt like I was his psychiatrist. He released a lot of this stuff. That was really painful stuff. And we ended up doing this, I think, amazing. Miss Gretchen, she was in it. Low budget, and Bach, you were in it. But good, I think really good documentary on what happened in Hurricane Katrina in the Superdome. I don't like the title, but you can find it on streaming services. It's called Katrina Cop in the Superdome. I actually have anybody got any influence, I got a film script that I'm trying to get done, and I'm having a conversation with some folks about it. But that's how I got started, was doing that. And now it's about to be 20 years since it happened. But, man, time flies. Like, golly. I still remember I was in Denver at the time, and me and him sitting in my house and talking for hours, documenting everything. But just it all started from our conversation at a Hornets game. Right.
We got another question. We got time for two more questions. So we'll get you. We got two more questions. I think we good. What, three more questions? Three. We got two. Okay, we go.
I remember when you were in Texas when the shuttle exploded and you were asked to cover that story. Can you elaborate a little bit about your experience and how it affected you?
You have a good memory. That's a weird thing. That's top 5 weird things I had to do. Like, but no, I was actually covering the Denver Nuggets. I believe this was early 2000s. My boss called me, wakes me up. I'm in my hotel room. He's like, turn on the TV. Why? It's 7 a.m. Just turn on the TV. And I'm like, what is the anniversary of the space shuttle blowing up? He's like, no. I said, it happened again? He's like, yeah. I said, where? Texas. And I'm in Dallas for a Nuggets-Mavericks game. And I remember telling him, I'm like, I ain't covering a basketball game tonight, huh? And he said, nope. You're the only reporter we got in Texas, so you're going to cover this tragedy of this, the Challenger falling to pieces. And so all I had was my NBA media credential. I called my uncle, Neil Armand, nicknamed Squeak, as they know, and he lived in Dallas or Mesquite, and I picked him up in my little Lincoln Navigator. I forgot what kind of car it was. But it had you remember those cars? It had the GPS on the
Oh yeah, on the dash, on
the dashboard.
Dashboard, yeah, big, yeah.
And we put some little town in Texas, that we had to go to, and he rode with me. And I remember we drove into the town, and I'm just on my own. I'm just trying to figure this out. They're just like, go to this town and write about it. And I drove up, and I remember seeing the cop. It was 2-lane highway, and there was a cop and 2 people on the side of the road, and they're just staring at something. So I pull over. The cop starts yelling, be careful, be careful. I'm like, what? He's like, that's the door of the space shuttle laying on the ground there. It's like, don't touch it. I'm like, I ain't touching that. So I go back in the car, and my uncle's like, Hoss, we about to see history today. I'm like, yeah. Looks like it. And then I go into the city. I'm trying to Nacogdoches, Texas.
Yep.
Little town. We ended up seeing pieces of the space shuttle all over town.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let me fix something. It wasn't. It was a helmet that I saw first. I'm not saying anything was in the helmet, but there was a helmet. Went to the city. There was a giant piece of the space shuttle in the middle of the town. That because it happened at like 6 in the morning, luckily on a Saturday, it didn't hit anybody.
Right.
But it was horrible. Covered that. Got this like Airbnb or bed and breakfast. Rented that. The guy was like, I usually charge people $100, but I'll charge you $80. All right. I took it for $80. My uncle took a nap. I wrote the story. Remember, we ate some seafood, and this other reporter came in, and I'm kind of 2 steps ahead all the time. I'm like, this is not my world. I'm a basketball reporter. I changed my flight to leave the next day at 6 a.m., drove by Oklahoma, got on a plane, went back to Denver, gave the other guy my room. The editor of the paper called me like 8 in the morning. Man, that was amazing. That was a great story. It was so good. I'm like, oh, thank you. So what are you going to do today? I'm going to Nuggets practice. I'm back at Denver, man. Like, I ain't doing this long. So I'm like, oh.
You didn't want to do news.
Nobody
You didn't
said
want
nothing to me, so I went back. Yeah.
You didn't want to do news.
Yeah. But I just
you did your duty,
it
though.
But that's the hat, for the journalists in here. Like, sometimes you got to turn on other hats, put on other hats. Like, you want to be an entertainment reporter. Like, I never want to go cover no war. But sometimes I got to write about, I never want to be the person that goes to a crime scene. But in sports, sometimes that's
Sometimes you got to
connected.
go. Sometimes connected, yeah.
And that day, they asked me to put on a different hat because it was a tragedy, and I was the closest one to it. Good question, Christian.
Next question, we go over here, and then we go there. And then I think that'll be it.
Thank you. I'm Raven, and I'm also his favorite cousin, too. I just want to, because I know this is on tape, so send that to the other cousins. Marc, I have 2 questions for you. My first question, you've done a lot. You've covered Denver Nuggets. You've undefeated documentaries. So much in your career thus far. What was that thing for you, that turning point, that pivotal moment where everyone knew who you were? What was that project? What was the story? What was the thing that kind of made you Marc J. Spears? Oh, wait. Do you want my second question now, or?
Sure.
My second question, because we're at Loyola, and of course there's a lot of students that are wondering this, what is the blueprint for someone that is an aspiring journalist? What is the blueprint? What are the steps that someone can take in college and even, younger than that to, reach those aspirations of being a journalist?
Okay. Is that Ro Brown over there?
That's Ro, the legend.
How you doing, sir? Good
How
to
you doing,
see
sir?
Yeah. Journalism legend there. Good to see you. The first question was, I thank him a lot. I was in Denver, and, obviously going to ESPN changed everything, but I felt like I was stuck at the Denver Post. I covered the Nuggets for 8 years. Nothing was changing. I went up for a columnist job, didn't get it. So I remember I was being really upset about the columnist job, and I was like, I'm going to give myself overnight to worry about it, and then I got to come up with a different plan. Me being mad about it ain't going to change nothing. So the next morning, I started looking at different things, and then they had a job open covering the Boston Celtics. In 2007, they had Paul Pierce. They just got a guy named Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. And I was like, Carmelo and the Nuggets is cool, but going to Boston, the Celtics, the story Celtics, them winning a championship, that could change my career dramatically. And I fought to get the job, got it, was writing for a notable paper, Boston Globe, covering the Celtics, and they won a championship when Kevin Garnett yelled, anything is possible. I was in the back. You could see me in the back. And then from there, people just saw me different. I was doing the same thing I was doing in Denver, but it was on a championship team in a bigger market.
East Coast, coming to
And
the East Coast?
that's when, I went to Yahoo Sports from there and became national writer, and, that's when it changed.
East Coast changed your life.
Can I get a student question?
Any students? We got students. We got sports journalists in here. I know you have questions. I know y'all talked to him yesterday, but y'all have more. You got a question? Over here. Y'all have questions up there? All right.
So in class yesterday, you can hear me. You mentioned about like distinguishing yourself. So as a Hall of Fame journalist, what distinguishes like the exceptional journalists from like the regular ones? Like what sets them apart?
I guess probably the best way I could speak to it is in terms of the NBA. There's some journalists out there lazy that, they just do the minimum. The minimum is safe, right? But then you got a lot of people that, well, Woj's going to break this story, Shams is going to break this story, Chris Haynes is going to break the story, you'll break some stories, so I'm not going to be able to do it. I wasn't like that when I was coming up. I always tell them, like, get good relationships with the players. They'll tell you something. Get good relationships with their people. They'll tell you. There's always somebody that's going to tell you something. It's not just the agents. And so I think don't be defeatist. A lot of, like, journalists, once they get there, they're, like, comfortable. They get defeatist. I can't break this. I just want to follow it. It would drive me nuts to follow somebody all the time. Like, somebody break story on my beat. That stuff used to burn me. No, I didn't want nobody to break nothing on my beat. And so I think the most competitive journalists win, the most creative journalists win, the ones that some writers, I'll be like, dang, they wrote that. Oh, why not think of that? You know what I mean? Like, those are the journalists I respect, like the ones that are creative, get out of the box, get players to open up, speak about things that they may not be comfortable talking about. And so I think you just got to continue to be creative, compete, be where everybody else isn't. Like, if a player has a community appearance, whether they're the star or the last guy on the bench, I'll go to it. Because you'll build a relationship with them. I talk to the person that's the CEO. I talk to the person that sweeps the floor. There's so much information. There's a lot of things that people know. And so if they're going to let me be in the locker room for 30 minutes before the game, I'm in the locker room for 30 minutes before the game. I'm not going to get ice cream in the media room or just hang out by the court. No, I need to talk to people, be around people. So I think you just got to, shake hands, kiss a lot of babies, and just be present. And also listen. Like, listening, I think, is really important because a lot of times players will give you stories and you're not paying attention. They'll be like, yeah, before I was coming to the game and I put away my Lego model in the closet and then got in my car and drove. You do Legos? Like, and you'd be surprised, like, somebody, Miles Turner from the Pacers, for example, he's a big Lego guy. That's, like, been an incredible story, but he might have said that a bunch of times and nobody
no one
really
paid attention to it. No.
Like, like Klay Thompson rides a boat. Like, one of my stories I heard, Rajon Rondo likes to roller skate. I wrote a story, and that got a lot of clicks. So a lot of times I try to break news within stories that I'm writing, so I think when I talked to you guys yesterday, I was really fast, talking about a lot of different stuff, but your mind, I think the best journalists' minds are always spinning, being creative, thinking about what they could do that's different.
Hey, Mr. Spears. We spoke briefly. Joe Laurent, Howard University grad, soon to be Tulane alum, sports studies. I thought your background was pretty interesting, growing up in both the Bay, spending time in New Orleans and D.C. I find those cities to be similar in a lot of ways, like culturally. How did those cities, experiencing those cities, influence your perspective in your writing and just in your life in general?
And I was born in St. Louis, too, and have a lot of family in St. Louis. I maybe didn't go to St. Louis as much, but, like, the New Orleans culture is just – I understand why people don't want to leave here, why they feel like it's home, why it's beautiful, like it's food, it's culture, it's music. There's no other city in this country like New Orleans. Like, good, bad, and different, there's no other. So, like, you can't help but be attracted to that. And because my sister and I didn't grow up here, anytime we came here was special. We always try to connect to it. And she got her bachelor's at Dillard, and me getting to LSU, and so we're our family being here, like we're connected. It's almost if we grew up here. DC was a short time, but it's like, if anything, I don't know rural, right? I never grew up in a small town. I always grew up in like urban cities. So I like when I think about like a guy like Zion and Ja Morant, who've had some great games, but yes, they've had some struggles, but they grew up in the country. Like I try to educate myself more on the country because I didn't know the country. I didn't grow up in the country. Kind of try to figure out what they went through that was different, that maybe brings them pain and joy now, like demons they had to get through coming from a small town. So I'm always reading. I'm not just reading sports. I'm reading the paper locally, the front to cover. I'm reading Reuters. I'm reading Al Jazeera. I'm trying to keep up with what's going on in the world. When I get on a plane to Joburg tomorrow, I'm going to try to read up on Pretoria because I've never been there, and I want to know something about the city before I get there. So I'm always constantly trying to – I love what I know, but I'm kind of constantly educating myself about the rest of the world.
See what I tell y'all, my students in my class? What y'all get every week? That's right. You got to read.
Hey.
Growing up here in New Orleans, having an aspiration of being a basketball in the NBA, and even though it didn't go like I wanted, I didn't get to shake the commissioner's hand and kiss my mom. I was undrafted, but I did make it.
What's your name, sir?
Robert Pack is my name. Robert Pack.
Thank you.
Okay. So
you dunked on Michael Jordan once, didn't you?
One time.
Okay.
Yeah.
True story.
But once you made, as soon as I made it, and wanted to say, "Mama, we made it," it kicked in that it may be harder for me to stay in the league than it was for me to make it. And a lot of players get traded, they get cut in those moments where you have to persevere, come in. And I'm sure as a reporter, you made it to the NBA. It's something you wanted to do. What were some of the moments going through where you had to persevere and push through to allow you to make it to the Hall of Fame?
That's a great question, Mr. Pack. Good question. All right. I think my first job, like, I would implore to the journalists, like, get in. No matter where that is, like, get in. And my first job was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, covering University of Arkansas's football and basketball team, which was a great job, but I was making, like, $19,000 before taxes. I was broke. I was so broke that I was dating a woman at the time who had, my mom don't know this, she had 2 kids, and she was on government assistance, and she bought me groceries because she felt bad for me. That's how bad it was. I thought about getting a side job at McDonald's. I thought about quitting and going to grad school. I probably should have went and got food stamps, but I was too proud to do it, but I was stupid. I should have got that. At least I could have had some groceries. I would, like, go to games that I wasn't covering just to get the pregame meal. I would be happy when I had to drive to Fayetteville, Arkansas, because I get gas mileage money. And I remember they gave us a ham at Thanksgiving for Christmas. And I remember, like, I don't want no money. Why they give me this damn ham? I don't get nothing now. I wish I got the ham now. But, like, there were times then that I was like, how could I do this? This is tight. This is tough. But I just kept thinking, like, I'm in the game. I got to figure it out. This ain't forever. It's Oklahoma. It was slow. It wasn't rural, but around it was rural. Like, but I was like, this ain't forever. But I was in the game. Like Robert said, I got in. How do I stay in? How do I play on a better team? How do I play in a better city? And then next job, in 2 years, I was in Los Angeles, covering the Angels and the Dodgers. Everything's a season. It's not forever, but you got to get in. And I think a lot of young journalists is like, well, I can't leave New Orleans. I got to work for ESPN. And it took me 21 years to get to ESPN. I didn't get to ESPN overnight. It took me 21 years, and I think a lot of people want things overnight. It don't work that way. And then you also have to have a job. I made a lot of mistakes in Tulsa, but because it was a lower level, I could make mistakes, and it was they helped me. There was a one-armed white dude named Bob Colvin. If Bob Colvin called me today and said he needed $1,000, I'd find it for him. He took on his own time, he would help me figure out a way to write my stories better. He basically tutored me until I didn't need it anymore, how to write on deadline and how to do, tune up my writing. And but what you got to realize is when you get these entry-level jobs, you can make mistakes, and it's okay because they know you're just there for a season, and someone else is going to come in, and they're used to grooming people. But you come work for us, the NBA or ESPN, you better be ready. Like, if you ain't ready, you getting cut quick. Like, I see a lot of people come and go, and nobody's bigger than the brand. Like,
No one. No one.
So but when I got to ESPN, I wasn't walking in like, I hope I can make it. No, I knew I was nice. I was like, I'm good. I'm supposed to be here. But
You
built
prepared
that.
yourself. You built
I
it.
was ready.
Yeah. It's a process.
Yeah.
It's a process.
No, by the time I got there, I felt like I should have been there for 10 years already.
You should have, yeah.
So,
well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marc Spears, for coming in to give me your knowledge. Appreciate you, my brother. Looking forward to reading your stories from South Africa. And thank you for everyone coming out tonight. And have a great night.